Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into a really rich and, frankly, pretty complex source.
We are. We're looking at excerpts from the summing up section of H.P. Blavatsky's The Secret Doctrine, Volume 1, Cosmogenesis.
Right. Think of this as our roadmap, maybe, for navigating the core ideas and the sort of historical background laid out in this summary. It's about esoteric cosmogony.
Exactly. It's a specific view on how the cosmos came to be.
So our mission in this deep dive is really to unpack the key takeaways from this conclusion. What's it really telling us about the fundamental beliefs of this ancient wisdom tradition?
And how does it stack up against other philosophies,
Yeah.
Plus, it offers some genuinely surprising perspectives on the universe and, well, our place in it.
Yeah, get ready to look at reality through a slightly different lens, maybe even a pretty radical one.
We should probably start with our framing quote, the one attributed to T. Sub-Rho.
Oh yeah, the one about the chapters.
That's the one. Yeah. The history of creation and of this world, from its beginning up to the present time, is composed of 7 chapters. The 7th chapter is not yet written.
And this work, The Secret Doctrine, it positions itself as presenting that first chapter, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And right away, the source flags a huge challenge. It talks about the difficulty of even trying to render this vast universal law into a European language.
It calls it recurring, this law.
Yes, cyclical. And trying to capture it in, say, English is presented as incredibly hard. Daring, even.
Why so difficult? Is it just complex?
Well, the claim is deeper than that. It argues the original concepts weren't just human ideas. They were impressed upon early human consciousness by beings reflecting universal mind directly.
Okay, hold on. So the argument is that our modern languages, maybe except Sanskrit, which gets called the language of the gods, just aren't equipped for these profound truths.
That's exactly the claim. Any perceived failures or gaps in the work are blamed on these linguistic limitations, not the original wisdom itself. There's almost this, plea for forgiveness for even attempting it.
Wow. That definitely sets a high bar and positions this doctrine as something pretty unique. So where does it claim to fit in the grand scheme of world philosophies?
It states very clearly it doesn't exist in its entirety in any single exoteric system, the publicly known ones.
Not in its entirety. So bits and pieces might be elsewhere.
Perhaps, but the full picture, no. Instead, it claims to be a synthesis of the 6 orthodox schools of Indian philosophy.
Ah, okay. And by bringing those 6 together?
It constitutes the 7th school, which is this occult doctrine.
Interesting. And the source says you won't find this full doctrine on, Egyptian papyri or Assyrian tiles.
Correct. And maybe surprisingly, even the Upanishads part of the Vedas, often called the last word of human knowledge, are said to only offer the metaphysical aspect, not the complete cosmic story.
Okay, you brought up the Upanishads. The text really dives into those, doesn't it? The name itself is explained quite pointedly.
Yes, the conquest of ignorance by the revelation of secret spiritual knowledge. That's the meaning given.
And here's a key claim. You need a master key now to really get their full meaning. Suggests something's hidden.
It points directly to a tradition of, deliberate concealment, an esoteric tradition.
The Upanishads are described as Shruti, revealed knowledge, kind of like the Kabbalah's relationship to the Jewish Bible, expounding the secret meaning of the Vedas.
Exactly. They supposedly hold the beginning and end of all human knowledge, but, and this is crucial, they stopped fully revealing it after the time of the Buddha.
And the fact that they're now publicly available even to non-castes, Malekas and Western scholars,
Is presented as the very reason they're no longer fully esoteric in practice. The key, the deepest layer of meaning, is said to be withheld from the public texts.
that's a pretty provocative claim. That these foundational texts are incomplete or intentionally obscured. Does the source offer any, evidence for this?
It offers a couple of lines of reasoning. First, it points to what it calls a precast ethos within the Upanishads. It highlights stories where great teachers, even Brahmins, seek instruction from Kshatriya kings, the warrior caste.
Which suggests a different social structure for knowledge back then.
Right. A freedom of thought unknown in later periods, maybe closer to the earliest Rig Veda hymns. It hints at a time before rigid caste rules dictated who could learn what.
Okay, so the internal evidence points to a more open past. But what about the deliberate hiding of knowledge? That sounds specific.
It is. The source shares an esoteric tradition, supposedly from a manuscript about Buddha's life. It claims the Upanishads were originally complete, but used exclusively by temple Brahmins for training initiates, their chelas.
And Prince Gautama, the Buddha-to-be, he mastered this Brahmanical wisdom.
He did,
Mm.
and he apparently found it strikingly similar to teachings from certain Himalayan teachers of life.
Also called Sons of Wisdom, Brothers of the Sun, with a center in Tibet, Sidzang.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The text even throws in that the ancient Chinese Emperor Yu supposedly went there for knowledge.
So Buddha learns this stuff, sees it matches these other high teachings, and then gets annoyed it's being kept secret.
That's the story. He felt indignant that this profound wisdom was withheld from the majority, and the alleged reaction from the Brahmins.
What did they do?
Fearing the knowledge would spread too far, they abridged the texts, cut them down. Supposedly, the originals were 3 times the size of the Vedas and Brahmanas combined.
3 times. Wow. How did they shorten them without just rewriting everything?
The claim is specific. They didn't change the words left behind, but they detached the most vital portions, the parts containing the mystery of being.
And crucial.
They kept the key. They held on to the understanding, which, according to this narrative, allowed them to publicly dispute Buddha's teachings later by pointing to their now incomplete, or let's say de-keyed, texts. It's a narrative about knowledge control.
That definitely explains the need for a master key. The source also brings in Sri Sankaracharya, a huge figure in Indian philosophy. How does he fit?
He's described as basically the greatest initiate of historical ages. His commentaries, the Bhashyas, on the Upanishads are famous, but the source suggests his original, complete treatises are still guarded closely in his monasteries, his maths.
Like Sringagiri, potentially still run by real initiates.
That's the implication. So even Sankaracharya's widely available works might only be, well, part of the story.
Making the full knowledge a dead letter to most people.
Exactly, unless you have that hidden key. It hints that maybe the Smartava Brahmins, Sankaracharya's own sect, described as exclusive, proud, very learned, might hold that key or understand the dead letter texts correctly.
Given this whole backstory of secrets and abridgment, it makes sense the author expects people to push back hard against these claims.
Oh, absolutely. The text explicitly says it anticipates significant opposition denials,
Yeah.
probably from those who see the current text as complete and fully understood.
Okay, so we've got the setup. Ancient wisdom, translation challenges, hidden history. Now, let's get to the core. The 6 fundamental principles summarized here. What's the first one?
The first principle is all about the unbroken record of wisdom. The key takeaway is this isn't presented as some new idea or one person's genius. It's framed as the accumulated wisdom of the ages.
A continuous tradition, then.
Yes, its cosmogony is described as an uninterrupted record, passed down through, well, thousands of generations of seers. Built on oral traditions, yes, but claimed to originate from higher beings who watch over early humanity.
And the verification part is pretty crucial, isn't it? Not just blind faith.
Absolutely central. This tradition was supposedly rigorously tested, verified by wise men, maybe survivors of cataclysms, linked to a 5th race through the independent visions and experiences of great adepts.
Adepts being individuals who had perfected their abilities.
Yeah.
Physical, mental, psychic.
All of the above. Physical, mental, psychic, spiritual. And here's the clincher. No single adept's vision was accepted unless confirmed independently by others and validated over centuries of collective experience. Think of it as an ancient, very strict peer review for cosmic insights.
Wow, that's a strong claim about methodology. Okay, principle 2.
Principle 2 gets right to the absolute core, the one homogeneous divine substance principle. This is the ultimate reality, the source, the radical cause of everything. Everything comes from it, everything returns to it.
Substance principle. Why the 2 words? Sounds a bit paradoxical.
It is, from our viewpoint. In the manifested universe, which, remember, is seen as temporary, an illusion it appears as substance, the underlying stuff. But in abstract, unmanifest space, it remains pure principle, pure potential. It's the omnipresent, impersonal reality containing everything.
Impersonal is really key here, isn't it? Not a personal creator god.
Fundamental. Its impersonality is stressed, it's latent in every atom, and it is the universe in its absolute state. Terms like Parabrahman and Mula Prakriti come up the ultimate reality and its root substance fundamentally. One, but appearing dual in manifestation, even to the first spark, the Logos.
Got it. Principle 3, the universe as a periodical manifestation.
This one sounds simple, but is profound. The universe we experience isn't a one-off creation. It's just the recurring manifestation of this unknowable absolute essence. It appears, withdraws, appears again, like cycles, like breathing.
And the text itself admits calling it an essence is limiting.
Yes, because the absolute is beyond our human concepts of being or non-being. It's described as neither spirit nor matter, but the potential for both, the source of both. So in a way, it is both.
Which leads naturally into Principle 4, the universe as Maya, or illusion. Why call it all an illusion?
Because from the perspective of that eternal, absolute, unchanging reality, everything in the manifested universe is temporary, fleeting, from a firefly's life to a sun's life.
So compared to the yin-yang eternal, one, all change is less real, like a mirage or a will-o'-the-wisp, as the text puts it.
Exactly. To the philosopher contemplating the absolute, the ever-changing cosmos looks like that. But there's a crucial qualification. It's real enough for the conscious beings living within that illusion, who are, themselves, just as temporary and unreal from that ultimate standpoint. It has relative reality.
Okay. Principle 5 might be the one that really stretches modern thinking, universal consciousness.
This is definitely a major departure for many. The text asserts that everything in the universe is conscious. Everything. Possessing consciousness of its own kind, on its own plane or level.
Everything, including minerals, stones?
Yes. It directly challenges the idea that consciousness is exclusive to humans or animals, or even just organic life. It argues we have no right to deny consciousness in a stone just because we don't recognize its signs, which would obviously be very different from ours.
So ideas like dead matter or blind natural laws are rejected.
Completely rejected. Occult philosophy, as presented here, looks beyond the surface appearance. The noumenal essence, the underlying reality or potential, is considered more real than the objective form. It's argued that since nature itself emanates from absolute consciousness, it cannot be unconscious. Consciousness is attributed even to plants and minerals, though it's beyond our current grasp.
Fascinating. And Principle 6 links this universal consciousness to how the cosmos works. The universe is guided from within outwards by hierarchies of beings.
Right. The cosmos works from the inside out, following that as above, so below principle. Just like our actions start with an internal thought or feeling, the universe is guided, impelled by almost endless series of sentient beings, often called Dain Chohans, sometimes angels.
What are these Dain Chohans like? Not just, spirits with wings.
No, not in the popular sense. They're described as agents of karmic and cosmic laws. They vary infinitely in their levels of consciousness and intelligence. And here's a really key point that reframes things. The source claims every single one of these beings either was or is preparing to become a man in some cycle.
Whoa. So they're linked to human evolution. They're basically perfected or maybe incipient humans.
It's the idea presented, perfected when not incipient men. They differ from us terrestrial humans, mainly in lacking personality and our kind of emotional nature, which are seen as purely earthly temporary traits.
Personality is seen as a limitation, like an ever-numbing weight, the text says.
Exactly. Perfected beings shed it with the physical body. Incipient ones haven't developed it yet. Their individuality is more about their whole group or hierarchy, becoming less distinct the closer they are to the divine source. They're finite beings, but their higher principles, those immortal sparks of the divine flame, are only really individualized here on these temporary spheres of illusion. They're called living ones, emanations from absolute life.
Okay, so what's the relationship with us? Are they guardian angels we can pray to for help?
Definitely not, according to the source. It explicitly calls appeals for protection foolish. Why? Because these beings are bound by karma and cosmic law, just like we are. And since they lack personality, they don't have things like jealousy or wrath to appease. The text states flatly, man can neither propitiate nor command the divas.
No special favors then. But can we interact or become like them?
Yes, and this is where human potential comes in. Because humanity is said to be a composite containing the essence of all these hierarchies, a human can potentially become superior to any single one of them.
Oh,
By consciously suppressing the lower personal self, shedding that numbing weight, and realizing the non-separateness of your higher self from the one absolute self. By doing that, the text says you can become one of us, one of the Dhyanis, even while still on Earth.
like the idea of eating the fruit of knowledge dispelling ignorance.
Precisely that metaphor is used. Gaining that knowledge makes you like them. Then the harmony and solidarity of the entire hierarchy naturally extends its protection to you. It's not a personal favor, but alignment with their reality.
Clearly, this whole picture clashes with, well, a lot of other views. Materialism, for instance. The text addresses this.
It does. It sees materialism, the scientists focus only on the physically measurable, as one obstacle. And for spiritualists, it sees their focus limited often to just departed human spirits, showing an ignorance about matter's true, deeper nature.
So, accepting these ideas seems to boil down to one core belief.
The source hammers this home. Belief rests on accepting the unity of everything in nature's ultimate essence. Understanding how spirit and matter originally evolved together is presented as the key.
And it leads back to the idea that every so-called spirit, from archangel down to an elemental, is connected to the human journey.
Exactly. Either a disembodied human or a future human. Intelligence in any non-physical being is seen as proof it was gained through the experiences of the human cycle. There's only one absolute universal intelligence or omniscience, but it needs to be acquired individually to become relatable to our consciousness.
So things like evolution, natural selection, they aren't just random.
Not in this view. The progressive movement towards higher life, the apparent design, survival of the fittest, it's all seen as working towards a grand purpose. That's why unconscious nature is rejected. Nature is viewed as an aggregate of forces, yes, but manipulated by semi-intelligent beings, elementals, who are guided by higher intelligences, the Dayan Chohans.
And these guides, the Dain Chohans.
Their collective activity forms the manifested word, the verubim, of the unmanifested logos. They are the mind and the operative law of the universe in action.
The text mentions three aspects of the universe. Can you break those down quickly?
Sure. There's the pre-existing, what evolves from the eternal, the ever-existing, the eternal noumenal reality, the absolute source, the only true reality, and the phenomenal, our world of illusion, the temporary reflection.
And there's that great metaphor for the phenomenal world.
The Chinese shadow play. During Manvantara, the time of manifestation, the real cosmos, the ever-existing, is like the object hidden behind the screen. We and everything we perceive are just the flickering shadows on the screen of Mahamaya, the great illusion. The real figures, the Dain Chohans pulling the strings, are unseen. This, the text says, was taught universally in antiquity, often using trinities as symbols. Only the ever-existing is truly real.
It connects this back to the Indian schools, right?
Yes, saying this view aligns with the 6 orthodox schools, with the secret doctrine, the gnosis, being the 7th, synthesizing them.
Bringing these ancient, complex, and frankly challenging ideas into the modern world, the author must anticipate resistance.
Definitely. The author hopes that even if superficially handled, these archaic teachings might seem more scientifically plausible, exoterically, than other scriptures viewed the same way, but admits much more is withheld than revealed, encouraging the student's intuition.
And the main aims stated are
To elucidate, supplement, and defend these doctrines against modern forces like sectarianism and materialism, which is often mislabeled as science, according to the text.
planning to use science's own tools against it.
Yes, engaging materialistic science with its own methods of argument, trying to highlight its weaknesses. It frames a whole debate as a choice. Hermes, representing universal wisdom, intuition, the experience of ages, versus Aristotle, representing a more limited, Western-centric worldview that rejects intuition.
There's a quote from Hermes used here.
Knowledge differs much from sense. For sense is of things that surmount it, but knowledge, gnosis or G, is the end of sense, meaning the end of illusion created by our physical brain and intellect. It contrasts acquired knowledge, manas, with the intuitive omniscience of the spiritual soul, buddhi.
Okay, so after laying all this out, the text summarizes some key facts it claims are proven. What are they?
Right, the takeaways. First, the doctrine is not atheistic, but it rejects anthropomorphic personal gods, similar to the Hindu Nastika rejection of idols.
Second,
It admits a logos, a collective creator, or demiurgos. Think of an architect providing the plan from the universe's inherent ideation, but leaving the actual building work to the masons, the hosts of intelligent powers and forces.
but this demiurgos isn't a personal god outside the cosmos.
No, it's the aggregate of the Dayan Chohans and the cosmic forces themselves.
Third point,
These forces are dual. There's the irrational brute energy inherent in matter, and there's the intelligent soul or cosmic consciousness, the Dayan Chohanic thought, guiding that energy. The results are always subject to karma.
and because the process isn't always perfect,
These hosts or powers aren't really proper objects for worship, but they do deserve gratitude and reverence. Humanity's role is to try and co-work intelligently with nature, not command or blindly worship parts of it. The ultimate, unknowable, causeless cause, Karana, is only approached silently, within the heart, with spirit as the mediator and good actions as the only true priests, like Jesus praying in secret.
point 4 concerns matter.
Matter is eternal. It's the upadi, the physical basis or vehicle for the universal mind's ideas to manifest. Crucially, there is no inorganic or dead matter. Science's distinction is seen as arbitrary.
There's another Hermes quote here.
Yes. "O my son, matter becomes, formerly it was, for matter is the vehicle of becoming." Matter is eternal in its essence, passive until it becomes active during a manifestation cycle, a manvantara. This is presented as ancient Hermetic and Vedantic wisdom, echoed by thinkers like Fichte and Paracelsus.
Paracelsus saying everything is organic and living.
Exactly. There is nothing dead in nature.
Point 5. Evolution.
It proceeds from an ideal plan, eternally held in the unconscious aspect of parabrahm, similar to Plato's concept of innate, self-existing ideas.
And the final point 6 describes the process of manifestation itself.
Yes, how it happens. The perpetual motion of the great breath, the act of divine power, awakens cosmos. It uses two contrary forces, centripetal and centrifugal, which are really aspects of one primordial force, to move everything from the noumenal potential state to the phenomenal manifested state.
So nothing is ever truly created from nothing.
Correct. Everything eternally is. Forms are perishable objectively, but not in their ideal essence. They existed as ideas before manifestation and will continue to exist as reflections or memories after. Forms they objectivize from within outwards, from a supersensuous essence.
Including human forms.
Yes, they existed as astral or ethereal prototypes first. Spiritual beings are said to have evolved the initial protoplasmic forms for future human egos out of their own essence. Only when that basic human mold, the upati containing elements of past kingdoms like plant and future animal refinements, was ready, did terrestrial physical forces really start shaping it. Man's outer shell passed through every vegetable and animal form before taking its current human shape.
This sounds a bit like Paracelsus again.
The text draws a direct comparison. Paracelsus's Heliaster, primordial protomateria, evolves the cosmos, dividing into Eidos chaos, Mysterium magnum. This one essence is vital activity, spirit, plus vital matter, holding all potential. Magnus Limbus Heliaster is father-mother. Aries, the dividing power, acts. Production is spiritual, dynamic.
Spirit is living and life is spirit.
And life and spirit, Prakriti Purusha, produce all things, but they're essentially one. Even the elements have their own Heliaster. The text stresses how universal these ideas were, found in ancient Hinduism and Hermetism, referencing the Vishnu Purana.
So wrapping all this up, the author acknowledges this might be a tough sell right now.
Definitely. References H.D. Buckle's point that new ideas need to bide their time. What's rejected now might become commonplace later.
Expects the current generation might not be ready. Materialism might scorn it.
That's the stated expectation. But the concluding thought is one of revelation, albeit partial. A portion of the veil of Isis, the veil over ancient truths, is claimed to be rent. These truths are being offered again, providing life and regeneration, but only to those who are fit to receive them.
Wow. Okay, that was definitely a deep dive. We've journeyed through some incredibly dense and paradigm-shifting ideas about the universe, its origins, consciousness.
We really have. Looking at how this synthesis of ancient wisdom, as Blavatsky presents it, sets itself apart from both public philosophies and what it critiques as scientific materialism, exploring that whole hidden history claim around the Upanishads.
Yeah, and unpacking those 6 core principles, universal consciousness everywhere, Maya, or the temporary nature of the physical, these guiding hierarchies. It's a lot to take in.
And for you, the listener, hopefully this gives you a glimpse into a worldview that's radically different in many ways. Seeing consciousness as pervasive, recognizing the phenomenal world as fleeting, picturing evolution driven from within by intelligent forces.
It challenges so many conventional ideas about creation, matter, spirit, and humanity's place. That connection to cosmic beings through evolution is a wild concept.
It really is. It positions humanity not as separate or fallen, necessarily, but is intrinsically linked to and potentially capable of participating in these higher cosmic processes.
So here's a final thought for you to chew on after this deep dive. If you take seriously the idea presented here that everything in the universe is conscious on its own level, from stars to stones, and that the whole cosmos is guided from within by sentient beings we're evolutionarily related to, does that fundamentally change how you perceive the world around you?
Yeah, what does it mean to consider minerals and plants as having their own form of consciousness? How might that shift our relationship with the planet, with resources? And maybe the biggest question.
What does this imply about the untapped potential within human consciousness itself? Our own connection to these vast cosmic realities and hierarchies.
Definitely something to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.